But it's a fact that nobody is able to change the course of our times.
Well, you should be able to. You used to have the power to control the future. You just need to repeat what you did before.
I have no intention of doing that. My greatest happiness in life was being able to talk with you.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Zaku Talk. I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. This season, G versus Wing, and that means my co-host is the Teletubby.
Bob Skerry.
Yeah, I wish I didn't do that. I didn't want that.
Yeah, well, now it's in your and the listeners' ear.
Nobody wanted that. And of course, on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer. It's episode 34 of both these series this week. Very exciting episodes, but before we dive into that, Bob, how's your week been going?
Had a wonderfully depressed week up until today. Depression's a bitch, gang. And this is where I'm going to plug the whole go to therapy and stop feeling bad about it, because therapy is like a checkup that you get a little more often, and it makes you feel so much better over time. Not 1 or 2 sessions, over time. I'm starting to understand a bit more, and I'm going to look into seeing whether or not I have a more defined mood disorder than just mood disorder undefined per my recent diagnosis. Other than that, I've been watching a bunch of Evangelion with my wife in preparation for our podcast, which, if we're lucky, the first episode should be coming out by the time this episode comes out. Right now, we're still working with our working title of Neon Podcast Asmergalion.
I remember, yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. We just finished the main series. I think we're going to double back for the, 21 through 24.
Yeah.
Are the director's cut episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that on my platinum collection, which I got for a steal back in the day. I got it for $30.
Yeah, know, I had an opportunity. It wasn't 30, but it was like 50 at like a Newbury Comics. And I was there with it, and I was walking to the cashier, and I thought, like, in 2005, I thought, I'm probably never going to want to watch this again. And at the time, I was right. But, you know, 15 years later, I look differently now at media. And so a little bit of regret, but maybe someday we'll get some sort of Blu-ray jelly.
Well, you had Dash at the time, and he had the older box set, so I feel like that's probably another reason why you backed off it.
That could have been true. I was able to watch. Oh no, I didn't get to watch the movie because he gave me the box with the movie, but then the box didn't have the movie in it. It was just the case, and there was no disc. I go, Dash, where's the disc? And he went, oh, where is my disc?
For that argument. I think I remember you chewing out Dash in high school because of that. I'm looking forward to watching Death Rebirth in whatever way I can. I don't know if I have to do it on Netflix or something like that. We have at least End of Evangelion on DVD, and we're waiting on our copy of 1.11. Mm-hmm. You Will Not Advance. But we have 2 and 3 of the later movies. So now we just have to wait for the 4th one to drop sometime later this year.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
All right, enough vamping, though.
Yes, for me, nothing too exciting over here. Lots of rehearsals for both sort of the pilot and the animation this week, working with the composer as well, starting to onboard him. And grants. A lot of grants, Bob. Now that this feature script is done and presentable, well, a showable polish, a showable draft, we say. Got to get some grants in, had to file. Actually, this part I enjoy, filing for the copyright and the WGA assignment number. That always makes you feel like you've done something. But the grants, it's just endless paperwork all week. One of them's actually due Sunday night, so it's just been taking care of a lot of those things. Nothing as exciting or showable yet, but that's what's going on.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, Bob, why don't you tell me what happened in episode 34 of G Gundam this week?
Certainly. Stand Up Domon, Raging Tag Team Match, or in Japanese, Tate Domon, Arashi o yobu tagumachi. So tate is a verb for standing up. Literally, when it translates, it's standing domon as opposed to stand up.
Yeah, I gotcha.
The command. And then the rest of that, arashi, is the Japanese word for storm. In fact, there's a very well-known band, like a boy band, male idol band out in Japan called Arashi. And
big fans of G Gundam, I see.
Oh, yes, of course. But yobu is apparently some form of conjugation that is to call.
Mm-hmm.
So the literal translation of tate domon arashi o yobu tagumachi is standing domon, tag match that calls a storm.
Okay.
Just for language.
I gotcha.
Schwartz Bruder goes to the Neo-Hong Kong government building and sees the Devil Gundam in there healing. He is noticed by Master Asia and he flees. He spots Rain following him and carries her to safety. Prime Minister Wan believes Domon is the one who was spying, so he sets up a tag team match with Domon and Allenby versus 2 other Gundam fighters. The ring is rigged with a magnet, which produces a gravitational field 2,000 times that of normal gravity. We're going to get into that. Domon uses his hyper mode, which was modified by Allenby, in order to break free. Domon and Allenby then use a double Godfinger attack in order to easily defeat their opponents.
Yes, quite easily he did dispatch them once he was not magnetized. Over here in Gundam Wing we have, and its name is Epion. Sono na wa Epion. Is the Sono the name? Is the Na the name?
So literally, when you gave me the Japanese text, it translates as Sono naha as opposed to wa.
Okay.
At the end there. And it should be separated the way that we have it for our Romaji translation that you gave me as well. But namae is the word that I always learned for name.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm curious as to whether or not sono here is call instead.
Oh.
So they call it Epion.
Interesting. Okay.
But that's purely out of speculation.
Hero enters Trey's Luxembourg mansion / home prison. There, a philosophical Trey's, as if there were any other kind, presents Hero with his Gundam Epion, which is equipped with a Zero-like system. Meanwhile, Romefeller attempts to destroy the Wing Zero, but is intercepted by Zex, who sacrifices the Tall Geese as a distraction in order to acquire the Wing Zero Gundam.
Yeah, Skeyhill, tell me a bit more about your take on G Gundam this week.
Yeah, so magnets, how do they work, Bob?
Fucking miracles.
I guess so. The giant magnet that looks like a cartoon Acme magnet underneath the stage.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And they even, at least on my DVD, they have it written in Japanese, but it does clearly say north and south on the 2 poles.
Yeah, I mean, there was Japanese characters on there, but I didn't know what they were.
Yeah. I didn't know if they were going to do the crappy cash overlay of north and south over them.
No.
Have a hiffle situation.
Yeah, no, nothing fun like that. Okay.
2,000 times gravity, huh?
They fortunately didn't throw out a ridiculous number in the English dub, but they are just going to that as the visual. I didn't need to see a giant looking magnet. You just say we put a magnet underneath it. It's like a circle thing, like in Big O. It's just a big circle thing. It's underneath. It's hitting just the Domon area. I'd be like, all right.
This sure is a Super Robo series scale.
Wile E. Coyote is gonna run through. Try to drop an anvil onto Domon Gundam, and Domon's just gonna paint a tunnel in the side of a cliff and run through it.
God damn it. I mean, at the least, the thing I had more of a problem with, and it's not even the 2,000 times gravity, because if motherfuckers can do it with Dragon Ball Z, we can do it here.
Yeah, you're all in the same vein.
My bigger problem is that it only affects the God Gundam and not literally everything else nearby. 2,000 times gravity.
Yeah, but it's right underneath Domon. It's localized to the Domon spot. That's why, because it's only pointing at Domon, the big wishbone.
I understand, but we have on more than one occasion different parts of Gundams, whether that be Allenby's Nobel Gundam or either of the Ashura or Skull Gundams, making contact at one point or another with Domon. They should either be magnetized to Domon directly or hit the ground as it gets into the field range.
Yeah, Bob, the show doesn't care.
I know. I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna start splicing things here, if you're gonna give me a full size magnet, then we're gonna go with magnet rules. If you wanted to have your don't show, don't tell situation, then fine. I'll use the power of imagination to not give a shit.
G Gundam doesn't care about rules. Doesn't care. Wants to look cool. Giant magnets look cool, I guess.
You're correct.
The end.
If we were watching one of my Sentai shows, this would totally fly.
Well, yeah, and here we are. We're in Sentai Roboland. I don't know why this had to be a 2-on-2 fight, other than that the show creators wanted to get Allenby into more screen time.
Partially.
So when the narrator is going to be like, Domon's going to have 2 opponents today? How can this be? I was like, yeah, how can that? How's Wolfak going to sneak that one by? And I was like, Domon might have a tough time with 2 guys, right? Because we could But then they're like, all right, you're going to team up with Allenby. And I go, well, this is much less scary. They're going to easily cream these guys. But then they sneak attack Domon with the magnet. I thought, well, why isn't it just a 1-on-1 fight and you sneak attack Domon with the magnet? If you're just going to do that anyway, why are you doing this weird 2-on-2 charade thing?
Because he's trying to knock out both of them at the same time. Because all that Master Asia knew when something happened in the hangar bay there was that there was a person sneaking around, which alerted Wong. When Schwartzbruder ran away, he picked up Rain to make sure she didn't get assaulted. So now we have a male and female figure being bounded around. So even though we know Mikolo had seen that it was Schwartz and Rain, he's the only one that could confirm it, if anybody. And the one stipulation that I have here is that he doesn't say anything to Master Asia or Juan, so I don't know why he just lets Juan, after the fact, decide, yeah, it's absolutely Domon and Allenby that are the 2 that were bounding around in there, not Rain and Schwartz. So Juan decides, 2 birds, 1 cup. We're going to take out Domon and Allenby in a special 2-on-2 match. So now I can put both of them there, and we'll just make sure that Domon can't do anything using the magnet, and have him watch as Allenby is beaten to hell, acidified, and everything else. At the same time, she's going to have to start feeling awful because he is not saving her. And so we're trying to rend their friendship while also physically destroying at least one of them.
Yeah, you know what then? Use 2 magnets. Magnet them both. What, you're leaving too much margin for error here, Wofat. It's a bad plan.
Because they have to make some weird thing happen where people can believe that something is going wrong with Domon's thing. Because now Domon, he doesn't have to fail in the same way that Allenby does. Allenby can be beat to hell, but Domon needs to just not have his streak. He made such a big proclamation of it that we're hinging his entire run to get to the final round on him never losing. So he's trying to throw him off, which is why the end of this episode is such a big deal.
Yeah, here's what I don't know why it's such a big deal that he can't lose one like, who gives a shit, right? He can still fight in the finals, can't he?
I equate this to one of the things that keeps recurring with Master Asia in this episode.
Yeah.
Speaking of the warrior's soul, and, you know, apparently the pride of this warrior is so great that if he were to allow this to happen, that it would mean his failure as a warrior. He has devoted himself to this belief at this point, and because he's gotten this far, to fail at this point is going to rend his entire ability to fight asunder.
Yeah, me, the layman, not compelled by that. But
yeah,
Domon able to break out of the magnetic bonds thanks to this anti-magnet chip that she installed earlier in the
Is
episode.
that what they call it in your side?
No, they made no sense how this magic chip can defy the laws of reality.
The thing that they say on my side when I'm watching this is that she used a chip to help make the output of energy when using hyper mode to not overblow the thing. You get to have more juice flow through you. So we're saying here that, this chip that Allenby helped and tried to crisscross some wires and jury rig the Gundam is allowing for it to be overclocked. Like somebody's overclocking their sweet rig for when they do their 5v5 match on whatever fucking game they're playing.
Allenby has the most annoying transformation sequence.
Allenby has the most magical girl transformation sequence.
It is exactly that, yes.
But remember, what came out at this time?
Yes, I know why they did it. Not only does it annoy me, particularly just me, some other people probably like it. It's
my wife loved it.
Yeah, of course. It's so weird in the world of this show.
I love the contrast of the transformation between her and Domon. Domon's is so brooding and dark and action, and she's like, ribbon dance.
Yeah,
I love that.
You don't even need to do that. You're transformed. We're done. Digivolved. We did it. Like what is she? She's just jumping around in there for fun every time she does it.
This is the first time we've seen the transformation sequence fully, so it's possible. She could also just be giddy that she's going to get to fight alongside a fighter that she respects.
Okay. Master Asia, mad about these cheap tricks that Wofat plays, but has been okay with the other cheap tricks. They were fine.
The other cheap tricks still involved the fair fight jury. Like when it comes to his boy Domon, and this is actually a moment of interest for us.
Okay.
We see that Master Asia does respect Domon despite his outcry against it during the course of the second act.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it is fair to believe that he is now acknowledging Domon's capabilities. And the only reason he is okay with what happens after this match is that it is still considered a fair fight, even though it is testing Domon's resolve against the other members of the Shuffle Alliance.
Wofat, you can try to kill Domon all you want outside the ring through whatever means is necessary. But once he's in that ring and in that Gundam, you leave him alone.
Yes, that's literally what he's saying.
The narrator guy, and then gave names to these two opposing Gundams, but then the announcer gave them two different names.
On your side?
Yes, and the English dub. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I will always go back to this thing that irks me.
Yeah.
In Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills, literally episode 1, they introduce a monster of the week that they call Ninja Bot.
Yeah.
Which or Samurai Bot, and then they call him Ninja Bot or whatever the reverse is here. They swap between the same name or these two names on the same creature. It's not like, oh, one fell and we're going to use the same costume for a different one that comes out at the same time. They just had a really bad script that had typos for different names they were going to use and never changed it.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead on a limb here and say that that's exactly what happened here. Instead of keeping just Ashura Gundam and Skull Gundam, they did Ashura, Skull, X and Y, whatever the other two are.
Yeah. So Ashura and Skull are what the announcer the narrator calls them. Then the announcer has two different names. And I go, what? Wofat picking to fight against Allenby and Domon, the two most evil looking contestants he could find. But you know what? They actually didn't seem like that bad of guys. They were just like, sweet, we can win now because something's wrong with Domon's Gundam.
Well, one of them is a sneaky little bastard with, like, I'm going to hide flamethrowers and acid inside my skull body.
Well, he's not allowed to do that.
Like,
that's not
I can
a rule.
literally split and bind this girl while I'm going to beat the hell out of her.
They just built their Gundams to do what they do. I don't know. They're doing the job.
No, but I mean, just compared to everybody else's seemingly straightforward fighting techniques, these definitely are made to seem the most cheaty. Of them.
What? The clown steals the opponent's thing. That's cheaty. That's ditto.
That's mimicry.
Okay, mimicry's okay, but hiding secret weapons, even though Domon's technically hyper mode is a secret weapon, is cheaty.
Well, now that we've seen it for the first time, this is literally the first time we've seen Neo Malaysia and Neo whatever the other one is. They're going to even be brought up.
Yeah, exactly. So you knew they were screwed from the beginning.
Well, like we've seen Neo Kenya, we've seen Neo Holland and everybody else. This is the first time we've seen these two exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, they seem like the shitty biker bar guys that we just picked up to go to our independent wrestling match, and they have not been okayed through the board.
So Schwartz, German guy, he can teleport now. You think he would do that more often?
He's been doing that. You literally commented on it like 3 episodes ago.
I don't even. Yeah, see,
he travels through
walls,
the shadows and everything.
He's all good with that. Yeah, I guess that was what it was. Because here he's just like at a wall, and then he like just goes through the wall. There was no shadow. He's just like boink. But then when he leaves,
it was
no
a shadowy
shadow.
corner.
No shit. It was like a flat section of wall in my version.
Well, okay, it's not like super dark shadow.
It's not a corner. There's no shadows actually there. He's just like no one's around, and then in the wall he goes.
It is a very ninja thing to do.
Yes, to magically
the supernatural side of the ninja thing
move
is
through
a very
matter. That's there. But then when he leaves, he doesn't have time to teleport. Just smashes through that wall.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck.
It's the difference between stealth and getting the fuck out of there.
And then nobody, even though Master Asia saw it was Schwartz, nobody wanted to punish Schwartz. They're just like, fuck Domon.
Asia never saw that it was Schwartz.
Oh, okay.
That's the whole point of it.
The implication to Master Asia's English reaction was that he did. Because he said like, you?
In the Japanese, he never knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Japanese, it's just that he knows that someone has intruded and is up on the catwalk.
Okay.
And then notices that his ribbon gets cut, and that's it. There is no other thing that ever gets shown to him directly.
Yes.
That's why he has to send everybody else after it. So the only person that would have known, potentially, is Miccolo. I think this is the first time Miccolo has ever interacted with this guy, so he might have just thought it was Domon in a fucking ninja getup. Why he's dressed up in German colors, who the fuck knows?
Miccolo cutting through a building with his kick, clear in half. He is much improved from his last bout with Domon.
Silver kick. Is that what they call it in your side?
I think so. There was a name for it. So there's that. And
because we were trying to do this whole antithesis of silver and gold here.
Yeah, so they did that. This ending that you sort of alluded to, I'm actually left feeling underwhelmed by it because I think, well, Domon either has tied or beaten all these fighters and has a much better mobile suit now. So I don't feel like these people are threats to him.
So how to put it? Did you watch the ending? You don't watch the lead-ins for the G Gundam ones,
no,
right?
I'm very strong against those, and I don't remember this show well enough to want to do that.
That's fine. So this is our opportunity to have the other 4 get to Domon's level.
Okay.
In their own rights, especially because they are Shuffle Alliance members, they're going to do some things that will help them to be on his level when we get to Endgame in about 10 or so episodes.
So is it important to get them to that level? Yes, probably. I'm glad they're doing that. You think they would do that in their own fights, but fine. But when you end the show where like the bad guy's laughing and the music's more dramatic and their images are up on the screen and we're like, oh no, Domon, and the narrator's like, Domon's hardest opponents yet. How will he do it? And I go, well, he's already done it. I'm not. So like they're trying to leave me with a sense of like, watch out. This is going to be Domon's hardest battles ever. And I go, unlikely.
So here's the deal with that though. From our perspective as the viewers, especially if we're not going to be jaded as we go in, and I'm not saying that of you, I'm just saying in general for the average anime viewer, we're going to see that these characters who for these 4 always had to end in a draw. We never defeated them. We always ended them in a draw because they were underestimating him. The second time they've ever done fights against each other, they were doing it in a sparring way. It was never an officially sanctioned Gundam match between them.
Yep.
And I'm referring to the Guiana Highlands. I'm not going to count anything that happened in the Let's Go on a Field Trip episodes.
Yep.
So this is his true second match with them. True second official match against any of them. And now that they've come to work together and understand each other's abilities and push each other to work harder, they're all ready to have a true fight. Is Doma going to win every one of them? Of course he fucking is. I'm not going to pretend like this is going to be the fight of the ages against each one of them, because we wouldn't care if he were going to lose against Chibity, because when he beats Chibity, he's going to go on to the next one, and we're going to go through all four of them. I'm not going to try and put anything, any wool over your eyes, but we want to see how they get there. We want to see this as the opportunity for them to come to a acceptable enough end of their hero's journey for what they are doing.
But also, Doma has the much better Gundam now, so I have no reason to be nervous about any of these battles.
Get ready for shiny stuff.
Okay, fine. But I don't know that's happening. When this episode ends, it's not hinting at that for me. It wants me to be like, oh no. And if that's not what its goal is in the next 4 episodes, then it should just be like, hey, won't this be cool? Or something like that.
I'm not even trying to suggest anything beyond the fact of this is how most shonen anime, most tokusatsu, and most card game shows go. Like, we're getting towards the latter part of the series. Yeah. We're going to see the coolest thing that each of them has capable of their respective Gundams and their abilities now.
There you go. That's all I got on the G Gundam.
Getting to Gundam Wing,
yes,
I appreciate how much time we spend with both Treize and with Hiro getting to actually interact with each other directly.
Yeah, it's only the second of the main characters to interact with who was set up to be our primary antagonist, and it's the most important of the main characters. Finally doing it 34 episodes in.
I think what I love about it, though, is that this is very much like one of the ending moments in Empire Strikes Back, as far as the tone feels to me. This is when we have Hiro finally realize, I'm exactly like this guy. In fact, I might be weaker because I can't handle the sight of what it is my future holds. I love the Epion. Yeah. I got to put it out there. I always liked the gist of its weapon back when you and I used to play Gundam Battle Assault 2. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do plan on building it because, as my good friend Skeyhill failed to let me know, and he knows enough about me at this point that he should have been able to tell me how much I would love Epion. It's a fucking transforming dragon.
Well, that's the one I always forget because I hate it. I hate that. But everything else...
I love that!
Everything else I love about it. It was the first model I ever built. This episode premiered on my birthday, fun fact, in America. And I love this idea. One, the way Treize designed it is it's only meant for close combat. There is just a couple of some Vulcans in its head, but he didn't want it to be this long-range thing. He wanted you to have to go and duel with this. So to deal with that, he's got the heat whip, but also this blade that powers directly into its generator. So it's not this external power, it gets to be this giant blade. But also this idea where he's like, you cannot pilot this as a winner. You have to be a loser when you pilot this. Super important, great flavor there. And then it's got a zero system kind of thing to boot. Everything about it is sort of perfection. It's always been my favorite. This is probably the first Gundam I ever saw, and it's never been not my favorite.
Honestly, I love this one. Of all the Gundams that I've seen so far, I don't care about updated designs of any of them or whatever. It's those who would choose to expel the life from others without understanding that human loss that are the true villains. And I think that the Epion system is a great representation of that because it showed in the case of Hiro, well, if everyone's going to fight, no one's going to survive. You know, he had to then carry the weight of that after the fact. That's why he's a loser by the end of it, is he massacred the entirety of what was occurring in that battle.
So we'll come back to this loser thing because there's a lot to pick apart there. And we won't get to finish this discussion this episode. But yeah, so essentially, another thing I like about it is what Treize says is that it's going to eliminate all distractions. And so Hiro...
Domon.
Yeah, Domon in this show doesn't know what to do. Hiro's in this show. And he begins this debate with Treize saying that I just fight peace is just an outcome that happens when all the fighting is done, but all I know how to do is fight. And then Treize tries to figure out, well, who are your enemies? And he goes, anyone who fights me is my enemy. And then he gets out into the battlefield, and he doesn't know which ones are his enemies. Is it just the mobile dolls? Is it the Treize factions? He doesn't know. And the Epion says, like, okay, well, let's get rid of all those distractions then. No more worries. They can all be your enemies. Problem solved. And then he has to kill them all. And he goes into this weird blood rage kind of thing that the Epion puts into him. And then he comes back, and Treize had said, well, if you don't see, I don't see a future for me when I look in the Epion, but I think you could. And then if you don't, then we'll kill each other. And Hero gets out of the mobile suit, and Treize asks, have you seen anything? And Hero says nothing. And then he goes, okay. And then he goes to give him a gun, and then Hero's like, I can't kill you. I don't have the right to, and passes out.
That's interesting. It's stated very differently on my side when I'm watching it in Japanese. Mm-hmm. The subtitles state that the wager in question here is, if you see a future, then we will duel. If you see no future, then you're just like me. The
English and the manga, they're both sort of very clear. It's like, I'm giving this to you because I think you have the power to change the world. So far in this debate we've been having, you have not impressed me. I think Relina will do a better job than you.
Yeah.
But he also has a reference where he's like, after talking with you, I think it's only fair if you and I both die at the same time. So he says, if you don't have a future and I don't have a future, then there's no point in us continuing because the world is going to move on without us, and we are powerless to stop it. So let's just kill each other, and that way we can die at the same time. That
is very different from what I got. Mm-hmm. That is so the scene in question here goes into, don't disappoint me any further with everything that he just said about, fighting anybody who's in his way, anybody who's willing to kill him. He says something to the effect of, if that is how you see things, then Relina is a far stronger person than you are.
Yes. So in the English, he says that because, after what you've just said, Treize has come to realize, okay, so you're battling with destiny yourself. And Hero says, yes. And he says, well, Relina's not doing that. Relina is taking on the destiny of being this Peacecraft monarch and carrying that name out, and she's okay with it. So that's why she's stronger than you. She's going to shoulder that burden, and you won't. You came here to die.
I feel like when it comes to this scenario that they've found themselves in, it's not until we see Hero on the battlefield, because I didn't take on the interpretation of the Epion system saying that everything that is distracting you right now of who is my enemy, it's all my enemy. I just took it as a built-in feature of, if they are enemies, then they're all enemies. It is making the decision on the behalf of the user. Well, if you can't decide, then they all are.
Well, yeah. So
it seemed very similar to the Zero in that way.
Kind of. This one's though specific to Hero, because the whole point of this discussion with Treize is that we find out that Hero has lost sight of his enemies, because because when he came down to Earth, it was like eliminate Oz, eliminate Treize, and then you're done. You saved the colonies. But now the Treize faction is split away from Romefeller. Romefeller has revealed itself to be bad. The Alliance is no longer in power. The colonies have turned against the Gundams. It's a giant shit show now. And so what we realize is that Hero doesn't know who his enemies are anymore. And so to eliminate that distraction, to help Hero out, he says, well, don't worry about which one's worth killing. They're all trying to kill you. Let's just assume that. And then there you go. It's not necessarily what's happening with the Wing Zero, because it's affecting each pilot differently based on their brains. And so, like with Catra, he didn't want to kill everybody. He was just, based on how he was feeling on what happened to his father, the Zero system said, okay, well, the colonies are your bad guys then, right? That's who you get at. And this is the system that can get rid of those. This is the machine that can get rid of those things. And he said, sweet, let's go. And it like just sort of encouraged Catra's mind to do that. And with Duo and Trant, what they were seeing was like these things that would happen if they kept doing the actions that they did. So
so it's pre-calculating. It's like a chess master device where if you make this move with this pawn, these are the potential outcomes. This is the way that it'll go if you keep going this route.
Yeah, if you make this move, here are the 800 things that can happen 40 moves from now. Be prepared. And that's too much. But like, so somebody else could pilot the Wing or the Zero or the Epion in that situation and have done that battle with the Trace faction, the Mobile Dolls, differently. But because Hero didn't know who his enemies were, the Epion made it easy for him and said they all are. Because you already came in and saying, like, anyone who fights me will be my enemy. They're not technically fighting you yet, but they are fighting, and that's close enough to not have to deal with any of these moral quagmires. Boom, done. War's done. Everybody in Luxembourg defeated. Trace faction sort of wiped out at this point.
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah, I don't know. Then Hero Trace now seems to end that episode on an ambiguous note, but I think he kind of has more faith that Hero will be able to do with the Epion what he needs to do. It's this great colored scene. There's something so, like, hopeless kind of in that moment when they're there and the sun is setting, everything is bathed in this red and orange. The music's all gone. The sound effects are very minimal, very naturalist. And it's just, I don't know, this very pure and matter-of-fact moment where it almost feels like desert in a way, like an emotional desert is happening for us. It's great.
I'm willing to meet you on that. I feel like the way it feels is it is a setting of the sun, not just on the day, but also the lives that were lost. It's supposed to be a bathing of blood around Hero. He is not physically covered in blood, but this lighting, and besides that, the very wine-colored suit that is the Epion makes it feel like it is a blood-soaked day. And I think that really speaks to the ideas here of, if you're only going to look at everybody as a potential target to assassinate you, then you have to assassinate them. But what does that mean? You're forever alone. You're never going to be able to live in this world, and this world is nothing but death for you.
Yes, so we get, and then the Hero sort of doesn't think he has the right to assassinate Trace. And then we pretty much end there. If you work hard enough, you can get a lot of insight into Hero here, and you obviously get a lot of insight into Trace, who's saying what he wants. Hero, interestingly enough, has a moment where he's almost like begging Trace. He's like, all right, Trace, go fix the world. Like you controlled the future once before, do it again. It's like you came to Earth in the first place to kill him. Ostensibly, you came here to kill him, and you're like, Trace, fix the problem. What a great moment this is, and it's just so unique. I just haven't seen something like this before.
Yeah, no, and I'm realizing too, before we start wrapping up Wing, we didn't even talk about the B plot.
Oh yes, Zek's sad R.I.P. Talgis, episode 3 to episode 34. Good mobile suit. Trace has to abandon it because, as we hinted at last episode, he's getting too fast for it.
Yeah.
We already knew it was on its way out, and he's like, sweet, look at that sweet suit that Trant's just being dead in. Let me go get that one.
Wait, Trant would have been a dead body in that?
Yeah. Yeah, because he dies at the end.
They never show it in the anime, so do they show it in the manga?
No, in the manga, here's what happens in the manga, right? So I sort of explained the difference where Trant sort of dies in there by self-destructing it. Then, at that moment, while Duo and Hildy are still there, the Peace Million shows up. And Zex goes to be like, hey, Gundam pilot. And Duo's like, oh, no, it's the Talgis. And then they battle. The new Death Scythe Hell actually gets a pretty decent gash into the Talgis. But then Howard, who knows Duo, is like, hey, whoa, hold on there. Listen, we just want to retrieve this and rebuild it so we can help kind of end this war. Duo, you want to join up with us? And Duo's like, nope. But Howard is nice and does fix up his Death Scythe Hell and makes it 100% complete. Then Zex takes the Wing Zero in and strips the Talgis of all of its parts to rebuild the Wing Zero because it was destroyed when Trant self-destructed in it. Much more better than these bombs that the Romafella people put on this episode. So then he sort of says his farewell to Talgis, and they sort of jettison it off into space.
Meanwhile, we have not Trant, who I at first thought was leading that whole charge of a bunch of dolls against.
Yeah, just some random guy.
Yeah, just a random guy.
Random dude.
Feels like Trant, regardless.
Same voice actor as Trant in this episode in English.
No shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Poor choice, but go on.
So what's interesting to me, though, is that he gets off the call to Romafeller that, the Talgis, the Wing Zero, and Zex all dead.
Yeah.
Then we see in this Nova Blast, we see the shadow of the Wing Zero as it's starting to come towards Not Trant. And Not Trant doesn't take a second to be like, oh shit, it's him. As far as I'm to understand as a first-time viewer, that gives Zex the ability to go unhindered because people are not expecting him from this point forward.
Yeah, could be. You'll have to wait and see.
I also think it's interesting that I'm sorry, this guy's name again, the one that builds,
the one that
former
builds?
Tall Geese builder.
Oh, Howard.
One, I felt like I was going to have to ask you about Howard and Zex when they just seemed to show up inside a area out of nowhere over comms. And then all of a sudden, within a moment, we already have the Tall Geese going through. They show at the end of the scene that there is the ship that's just on the outskirts of where the Zero was about to be blown to bits. So there's that. But now that we have Zex in the Zero, I'm wondering what's going to happen because it hasn't seemed to affected him yet. And Howard kind of alludes to the fact that, well, you're not batshit, so you're not going to go batshit because you're going to be able to keep up with the Zero system.
Yeah, there's a very, in the English translation, there's a very operative word in there where he says, you are a very experienced pilot, so that should be able to keep it from messing with your mind. The should, very important here. I will tell you, we'll probably find something out about it next episode.
But other than that, that's the long and short of it. Hey, look, Relina is the hope for many, including our love boy in denial hero here. So that's all that I can really say is hope Zex doesn't go crazy. Hey, look, Trey's isn't as much of a douchebag as I thought at the beginning of the series. Hey, look, Hero is showing to be more human than he had been instead of being the robo boy that I thought he was at the beginning of the series. And yeah, Relina is still hanging out with elephants, and we haven't had a change in the opening or ending theme.
Yeah, the ending theme's not going to change, sadly. Considering it's...
Oh, no matter what, the ending theme
The ending
will not
theme
change.
never changes, despite being the worst ending theme in all of Gundam. Oh, well.
Do we know if we're getting close to the opening theme changing, or does that literally only change in like the last 5 episodes?
I can't say, Bob.
Shut the frick up.
I can't do it.
You damn living Muppet. You actual brother of Beaker.
Yes, I love anytime Trey speaks, I love it. But I really love his speaking here with Hero because they both speak in kind of this almost cryptic way. Hero trying to bring him down to pragmatism, but kind of being brought up to his level. It's very interesting. And Hero having, when Trey says, "Don't die yet, kid, come find me," Hero has, again, that same intonation in his voice that we only ever hear when he's around Relina and feels completely confused and awestruck. Where he goes, what? Like it's that weird, that little boyhood cadence that kind of escapes from the usual veneer that he has.
That's very different from the Japanese. The fact that the voice actor gave that level of nuance is very interesting because we've never really had that on the Japanese side here. And again, I don't know if it's a difference in just the read or my translation or whatever, but when Trey says what he does at the beginning of this episode, as he did at the end of last episode, he says, "Don't die yet. We still need you," or something like that. He is not asking to be found. Yeah, he's just saying there's more for you to do. Yeah, in the anime, he's like, "Come find me," and then in the manga, I think they translate it better, where he's like, "Don't die yet. You're awfully far away from me if you're hoping to kill me," and like that gets Hero to come. Never says anything about having to kill him in the Japanese side. The thing the manga, this is another moment where the manga does one of these rare things poorly, where I think the decision is worse, but they were trying to compress a lot of things. They stick Dorothy in the mansion with Trey's. And I don't know why, because during this episode proper section of the manga, she doesn't say anything at all. She like brings over Trey's the key card that he uses to open up the Epion. But like when Hero is in Luxembourg battling, that's when Dorothy gives her speech that they have when they're fencing in the school about the two heroes. And she's like mad at him because he's going to self-destruct. And he's like, "You can't self-destruct. You'll never become a legend like that." And then eventually Trey's interrupts and says, "You can't die yet, kid," and then the thing like happens in the actual episode. So I don't know why they felt the need to put Dorothy there. It doesn't add much. It's actually very distracting. I think having that quiet, isolated moment between these two characters is a much better way to do it. Yeah.
But alas, so one of the rare changes I don't agree with in the manga, but some of the updated lines kind of work pretty well. So, yep, overall, one of my favorites. Glad we finally got to it. Glad we got to this Gundam. Now I can talk about it a lot more because I love it. All right, so the way we go this week.
Like sand through the hourglass, this is the way that we go.
There's a bold choice that G Gundam has to make when you make a show that's sort of nationality-based, where you have to pick sides, right? Some nations have to be your bad guys. Some have to be your good guys. That feels sort of like tough and hard to do. I would feel uncomfortable, like, who do I want to alienate here? What's my goal? And I guess, I don't know, maybe you do it like, all right, all the countries we're going to broadcast in, they can be the allies. All the countries we're not, or that we secretly don't like, they can be the bad guys. And then all these other countries can be everything else.
That's an interesting take. I'm going to say that it's less about the nation and more about the fighter the nation ended up choosing. It never seems to fall on the nation itself. Otherwise, is Domon a worthwhile representative of Japan enough so to say, yeah, this is Japan being represented to us in the show.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, great. This is every anime fan's dream character. He fights martial arts and he's cool.
He doesn't have a whole lot of depth.
No, he does not.
This is not how I think Japan wants to depict
They're just beating
Japanese.
up. Nobody's coming to this show for depth, Bob. I hate to break it to you. They want to see robots beating up other robots and giant magnets. Yeah.
But no, I think the way you have to look at it is like Neo Cuba. Right?
Neo Cuba.
Way back when we had the Arachno Gundam.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
I think it's a thing where we don't have to look at Cuba as a pure bad guy. It's just that their fighter is a dick, but happens to be a powerful fighter. It seems like every nation doesn't care about the morality of the character that is piloting. They just care of whether or not they are capable enough as a fighter. Allenby, sweet girl, is actively manipulated into the berserker system that is built into her mecha, right? Uh-huh. You have people like the other four members of the Shuffle Alliance who are all ranging in the 9 levels of D&D alignments, if we're going to broadly generalize here, which I know we are.
Well, you are, yeah.
Well, you're already putting the implication that there's no depth. So if I'm going to go to the shallow end of the pool, it's fair to say that, we have our lawful good character out of George. We have our neutral good out of what's his ass, Chibity, chaotic good out of Saisaishi, and lawful neutral to neutral out of Argo.
Okay.
So like using those broad strokes, we're not saying Russia, who had just stopped being a major Cold War member in America and along with the other allied United Nations characters, is painted as just a generic person. They're not good nor bad. Canada, a good friend to United States and Japan and so on, kind of a dick, but mostly on a revenge kick, and is just treated as a character, right? Fucking Neo-Egypt. We don't even get to see and learn much about the fighter from there because
he's a mummy.
He gets annihilated by a mummy. A mummy that ends up just being a guy who's infected with DD cells.
Yeah, but mummies.
DG cells, excuse me. But yeah, no, I don't think that we have as much to worry about those. I think the closest I would have to say is a villain besides our obvious end of series bad guys is the pair guys that we saw in this episode. These guys are clearly the most villainous that we've seen.
I don't think so.
Of the genera Gundam.
I don't even know how much they think they knew what was happening. But should I? So then I'll take your point because I don't feel like arguing about it. But like, shouldn't read anything into the good guys all being UN Security Council members and Hong Kong being like the villain of the show?
I'm gonna go on a limb and say not to think of it that way. but I'm also going to do some research on my end. I'm going to have to double back on those G files. I've been dragging my feet on it. But I'm gonna see if there's anything hiding in the G files there of why they chose who they did, because I'm sure that question came up from the interviewers. Well, why are Neo Malaysia and Neo whoever the other one was
Singapore?
Like honestly, this episode is one of the least memorable for me. I was actively less interested in this than I was in Gundam Wing.
Ooh, yes, Gundam Wing is a great one. All right,
this episode was amazing for Wing.
I know. Where did you go this week?
Music.
Okay, go on.
So I've said it before, and I don't know if I've said it on the podcast or just in our spaces between. In the opening sequence for Just Communication, the space from when they show the title card to the next set of lyrics, you hear all these mechanical whirs as we show off the 5 different Gundams, and it is done so well on the sound side. Not going to call it Foley necessarily, but the sounds that are used are almost musically enhancing the song, because whenever I listen to the song on its own, it feels like it's missing something, and I feel like that thing that is missed is those words that seem to work as a sort of non-verbal song within the song.
Yeah, I get that, especially since that's the primary way you've been hearing it for a while. Who've spent more time probably listening to the song than the theme at this point, I don't miss it so much, but also I have this long-standing grudge against infecting these opening themes with the sound effects that we talked about in an earlier episode.
Certainly.
So I could just have a bias there. It doesn't hurt in that moment compared to some of the other sections in the opening theme song, because it is sort of a bit of a lull, but that's, I don't know, just the ebb and flow of what they were trying to do musically. There also could have been, because of how tightly knit Tumix is in the musical score of all the Gundam Wing properties, there could be an element of, like, I don't know, working together on it, or maybe the song came out for the show or around the same time and they built it in. There could have been a consultant on it. I don't know, but they're certainly more involved than other performers have been in Gundams in the past. All right, well,
anyway,
then let's go to the Nerd Corner.
Let's take a walk to the Nerd Corner, where we will talk about a lot of nerd stuff. Yeah.
My Nerd Corner this week is a bit of a follow-up to a much earlier Nerd Corner. I talked about these Pun manga that Shinji had sent to me randomly over the summer. Well, I finally finished them. They are just as I thought at the end of the first volume. They are all fantastic. You go through a good chunk of this character's life, from, when he's a little boy up until even post, I don't know, like early adulthood in his 20s, late 20s maybe. All great. Hard to figure out where you're going to go. Great stylistic stuff happening with the art structure and the pacing and the type of characters being depicted here. Just again, big fan. I can confirm now the whole series is great. Takes you to some surprising places, really sort of punches your heart around a bit. So definitely check it out. We'll put those descriptions in the show notes again. Bob, what was your Nerd Corner this week?
I'm just going to talk about the series that I mentioned at the beginning of this, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
In case you haven't heard of this show, welcome.
This is a cult show. This is a show that is very low-key. Barely anybody in Japan has ever watched it.
Low-key? It's been called one of the greatest anime of all time.
One of the greatest stories, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I just feel like this is what most people know.
Huge cash cow.
Yes.
Huge cash cow. I've mentioned the Red Bard video.
Yeah.
If you still haven't watched it, listeners, go look up Red Bard Evangelion. There is an entire 30 minutes of describing in a perfect timeline a single day where you could feasibly have had your entire day revolve around Evangelion branded products. I might have Skeyhill or Lev throw the link in the show notes, but Evangelion I have not watched since the month after I graduated high school.
Ooh, you're
all the way in 2006.
Yeah.
Until earlier this week. I actively avoided watching it. Even though I've owned the platinum discs this entire time, I've never sat down with those discs.
Yeah.
I think I was afraid that if I had watched it again, I would either not have been hit the same way, or it would be weaker than I had given it credit for.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife has been asking for about a year now for us to sit down and do a rewatch. And I finally succumbed to it. Succumb?
No, just succumbed. It's okay. It's a strong verb.
I finally succumbed to us getting our watch going so we can start recording back on Sunday. We've watched all the episodes except for the director's cuts. And then we have to watch the pair of movies before getting into the 1.1, 2.2, 3.3 films.
I don't think you have to watch Life and Rebirth or whatever that one's called.
Death and Rebirth is something that my wife wants to watch because she enjoys the effective retelling OVA and being able to do a compare contrast between that and the earlier parts. I agree to a point that it's not wholly necessary, but to have that and then having watched that besides go into End of Evangelion, I think does make sense.
Okay, if you want, it's just sort of a compressed thing of a thing you've already seen.
Like I said, I agree with you.
Okay, all right, I'll stop there.
But yeah, no, for those of you out there, I would say that, and this is why it's my nerd corner for the week, if you are a person who has dealt with trauma in your life, fair warning, it might drudge it up. And I want you to know that if for some reason you listen to everybody else and start hating on Shinji, that he's being a, quote, little bitch and just needs to get in the robot, know that you're on the hit list. That poor child is 14 years old, has been stunted from youth, and yeah, is flawed, but not nearly as flawed as those people around him that people seem to espouse as being better characters. The reason people hate Shinji is because he reminds them too much of themselves.
Yeah, Shinji and Rilina both getting the short end of the stick because we come in with like anime expectations. Taking away the cartoonishness, I think, is great for anime in my mind. Especially, sure, like Evangelion. That's not even trying to be sort of standard run-of-the-mill stuff anyway.
But besides that, like some of those scenes, the animation is just amazing. Like the scene when we get the actual berserking of Eva 01 by like episode 20 or something. The animation, the flow of that animation is so astoundingly good for being a television level of animation, not a film, but it feels film-like. There's just so much good in that series.
Yeah, here's what's funny is I actually like my favorite moments, the ones that stand out to me, are the ones with no animation. These sort of just long pauses that exist in this world between these characters as they just exist, and this weird mechanical chirping is happening. That's why I'm just like, aha, what a great way, one, to keep your budget low, but two, to like create this mood in this world and do something that none of your other anime compatriots were doing at the time.
Oh, absolutely. And just before I forget to, before we start thanking Lev and everybody, I saw the eye color of Wong. It is brown. I want to be clear. It's a very burnt sienna brown.
Where did you see it?
Like for the better part of the episode, when we start seeing his glasses come down.
I'm still on Team Red here, based on my Blu-ray, my very clean.
It's definitely a reddish brown. I'm not going to deny that.
I could be okay with
but
that.
It is not the cartoony level of red in the same way that we had green eyes on frickin' Miccolo, or how they've had red eyes whenever they do their transformation sequences into their heavenly king.
Yeah,
forms.
It is not bright red. It is maybe a dull red, but red enough for me to go like, oh, evil. Not brown enough for me to go like, oh, every person on the planet.
Well, no, of course not. But that's what I'm saying is that this entire time I've been hearing the argument that the red you're calling is like mustache twirl red, as opposed to, yeah, it's a rusty red. It's like how some people have yellowy eyes. They have brown eyes, but the golden aspect of that brown comes out more. I'm just saying that this has more of like a ruddy red coming through the brown.
It's not Michelob's glowing red supernatural evil. It's just down to earth, regular red evil. But like you look at his eyes and you go like, and there's no way I'm looking at his eyes and being like, this guy's a good guy. He's going to be on our side later. All right. Well, let's thank Lev Van Rensselaer for helping us out this week. And, of course, let me thank my co-host this week, just as every week will happen this season, Bob Skerry. Bob, you got some plugs?
I think this week I'm going to be radio silent about those plugs. So that way next week you'll be ready and raring to write them down inside your address book or
Leave
whatever.
them wanting more. I like it.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I will not do that. I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at QuixoticUnited.com and presumably social media with a similar-sounding name. Thank you all for listening. Bob, tell the audience why the sun hates the moon.
One time, many, many years ago, the sun and the moon, strictly after their honeymoon, by about a year or a millennia, I don't quite recall at this point, they had an argument about who left the seat up. The sad truth is they both did.
Just one beat, communication.